Andrew here, and I'm trying to keep it together. If you've seen me lately, I kind of had a little difficulty keeping it together because I was highly amused. But I would turn to more serious topics. As I like to say, signs and portents. What's twisting in the wind? What are the tea leaves? What are we seeing in the tea leaves? A couple weeks ago, Dumb and Dumber Blackface Hitler made a speech. And in this speech, he pulled out his best slow, deep, sexy voice to tell us, you may be done with COVID, but COVID's not done with you. And then to go on to threaten us that if we don't get our 3rd or 4th or 5th or 87th booster, he's going to lock us down again. That he didn't put it in those words. It was, it was about as subtle as a baseball bat. But literally, he said, we no longer have the vaccine passports. We no longer have fully vaxxed. We have up to date. So if your last stab was more than 6 months ago, you're no longer up to date. And it would be, it's our job to protect you and to make sure that the healthcare system doesn't collapse. Well, actually, fuckhead, no, neither of those is your job, but that's the subject of another video. But put it together. Put the pieces together. We no longer have fully vaxxed. We have up-to-date vaccinations. And we have, we know we don't want to return to the days of restrictions and closures. And if we don't get 80 to 90% up to date, we would hate to blah, blah, blah. Put it together. He's telling you, you're no longer fully vaxxed. You have to be up to date. And if 80 to 90% of the country isn't up to date, he and Tranny Tim are ready to bring back the passports, the restrictions, and lock us down again. He's threatening us. Guns back in your ear. Put money in Pfizer's pocket, or be cast out of society. He's done it before, and he's perfectly willing to do it again. However, in the time between he made that speech and now, some interesting little things have come out. Did you see where the CDC in the United States admitted, it made reference to a peer-reviewed, you name it, study out of Brazil with 82,000 patients, where the ivermectin protocol that the CDC banned and countries across the first world were banning and pulling doctors' licenses for using had a 92% efficacy rate. Now, hilariously, and I'm going to try not to bust out here, the CDC, at the same time they admit the ivermectin protocol works, 92%, they recommend against it. Because Pfizer's paid them to recommend against it, I guess. But that's come out. And that bleeds out. I mean, Trudeau spends $2.2 billion a year buying favorable press. And so the average Canadian dimwit doesn't actually get that the CDC has admitted that they were lying and wrong, and one or the other or both, about ivermectin. It's right there on their site, 92% efficacy. And then let's jump across the pond. Recently, Denmark banned the COVID stabs for anybody under 18 without a doctor's prescription. You couldn't just go to a clinic and get stabbed because there's too much risk of bad side effects for the very small benefit that you get. In short, they admit, the country of Denmark said, COVID is less risky to children, to people under 18, than the Pfizer stab is. They even went so far as to apologize and say, we're sorry we coerced you into getting this thing. Don't feel bad. You made the best choice that you could with the information that you had at the time, but it was a mistake, and this thing shouldn't be going into children. A week later, England banned it for children under 12. And I don't even know, I think it's severely, it's beyond severe restrictions. They're basically not letting you put it in your children if they're under 12. Let's bat the shuttlecock back to Denmark. They're now saying you can't get it under 50 without a doctor's prescription. And this right before they're expecting a new wave of COVID infections. What have I been calling it? A bad head cold. Why have I been calling it that? Because I had it. It was a bad head cold. The Danes are telling us that people under 50 are at greater risk from the stabs than they are from COVID. Come back to Dumb and Dumber Blackface Hitler. The Canadian government just bought 12 million doses. Wait a minute. He wants 80%. We have 35, 38 million people? That's 26, 28 million people. They're 80% of that. We're talking about somewhere, I know, closer to 30 million people. But they bought 12 million doses. How are we going to get 80 to 90% compliance with doses for 1/3 or less of the population? I have expressed my disdain for our Prime Minister's intellect. I don't even think his handlers are giving him the information he needs to make these speeches. He's telling you, on the one hand, 80 to 90% compliance with up-to-date stabs, or restrictions and lockdowns come back. But at the same time, the people actually running the system are planning for 30% max. Jacinda Ardern has finally decided that absolute fascism in New Zealand is bad, and they've dropped restrictions. And that happened in the last couple of weeks. Last week, I think. Signs and portents, things coming around. Late to the game, as government always is, but it's interesting. There's talk that the backbenches are telling Dumb and Dumber to remove the ArriveCan app, that it's useless, it's not doing anything, and all it's doing, well, it's doing something, it's causing tremendously long delays at the border, and it's harming the tourist industry in both directions. The American border states, the cities, the mayors, whatnots, they're begging Canada to drop this fool thing, because if you have to either illegally give your medical information to return into the country, which again, read your passport, you don't have to do it, or you have to argue that at the border, what's the incentive? This ArriveCan app, I'm not leaving the country, because if I do, I have to come back into the country, and then I have to argue with some little Napoleon at the border that no, he can't have my medical history to admit me into the country. I'm not doing it. So the tourism industry is going to get the stuffing knocked out of it, or has got the stuffing knocked out, and they're asking it to be dropped. So on the one hand, you've got Dumb and Dumber who just can't wait to go back to martial law. But all of these other little signs and signals saying, no, you dumb racist bastard, that ship sailed. What's going to happen? Like I always say, well, I don't know. I look at the tea leaves and I make guesses. But Nostradamus I ain't. I'm just Andrew. Anyway, thank you for watching. That was my time. Now it's your time. And in the meantime, keep reading them tea leaves. Take care of yourself, and you'll see me soon.